In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to get that Mark Speer guitar tone. Some of you have requested it, so here it is. We've got a new camera angle, so bear with me. I hope this all goes okay. Let's get into it. To start off, you need a guitar with ideally humbuckers. I've tried it with my single coil Strat, but it just doesn't cut it for me. It just doesn't have the fullness that a humbucker does. So ideally, I'd have a Strat with DiMarzio Cruisers, exactly like Mark Speer, because then I could use the whammy bar as well. But I don't have that, so I've been making do. I say making do. I've got choices, which is a blessing, but I've been using my Ibanez, which I used in the May 9th video, my Les Paul, and more recently, this beautiful new telly, which I'll be doing a video on soon, talking about the creation of it. But yeah, I've been using this recently. So you need a humbucking guitar and humbuck it in the neck, because generally, a lot of the time, Mark plays neck pickup with his DiMarzio Cruiser humbucker, although it looks like a single coil, it is a humbucker. I'm working in Logic, but GarageBand, any DAW will do, as long as it's got an amp simulator, should be fine. If you're trying to get his sound with an amp, there's a great video by Premier Guitar where they go through Mark's rig. So if you're trying to get a sound with an amp, a lot of these points will apply and it should be useful. But if you want to watch that video as well, that's really interesting. Right, this is the important one. Wah-wah pedal. It is negotiable, but it really helps if you have one. This is actually the first pedal I ever owned. I think I was learning Voodoo Child at the time when I was probably, 11. And I just knew that I had to have one of these if I was going to get anywhere close to that sound. And yeah, it's still going strong all these years later. It's had one repair, but other than that, it's stood the test of time really well. So yeah, a wah-wah pedal, great if you've got one, but I'm going to show you how to do it with and without. As always, if you find my videos useful, please consider liking the video, subscribing to my channel, and there's also a link to my Patreon below if you'd like to support the channel in that way. Thank you very much. Right, let's start with the wah. We're going to be setting and leaving our wah in a fixed position, so I'm going to be showing you roughly where you want to put it. If you put it all the way to your heel, it's too bassy, there's not much clarity, doesn't really cut through. But if you put it too high up, it's ice-picky, brittle, horrible, spiky sound. So if you can find somewhere in the middle, you get that smooth, lovely mid kind of sound. Cuts through the mix really nicely. Okay, now I've got my wah set. I'll show you what's going on in Logic. So first of all, I've got an amp simulator. I'm using Bias Amp 2, but the Logic or GarageBand amp sim should be fine for this. I've got a black panel Fender style amp. Gains on 7.5. Then we've got bass and middle both on 10. 2.5 here, about 4 there, 10, and I've got a reverb going on here as well, a plate reverb, and I'll show you what it sounds like, just the amp. So a significant amount of reverb, and it already sounds pretty good, to be fair, pretty close. Next up, we've got a pedal board with just a very small amount of compression. I'll turn that on. So without, with, it's not doing loads. It's just smoothing things out a little bit. So it's not having a massive effect, but it is playing an important role. Next up, we've got another reverb. So I'm finding these in Space Designer. So all you got to do, if you've got Logic or GarageBand, I think GarageBand's got it, is click on this thing just here, reverb, Space Designer, and I've just gone mono. I think I can't remember, to be honest, but so Space Designer. So I'm on this one at the moment. And this is California Combo. Because Bias Amp doesn't have a spring reverb, I've had to find a spring reverb in this Space Designer. So I've gone to medium spaces, spring reverbs, California Combo. I won't have messed around with any of this, I don't think. All I would have done is adjust this bit here, because that's kind of that determines how much. So let's hear without. Let's hear with. Instantly you get that nice springy spring reverb. Sounds great. It's way closer to what we want. So that's that. You can see the wet's on -18 there. Next up, I've got a channel EQ. I'll turn it on. You can see we've got like a high pass filter over here. So basically that means just getting rid of everything pretty much below 50 hertz because you don't need it. And then I've just got a little bump here in the low end around between sort of 60 and 100, maybe a little bit more. Similar to how I've got the amp set, the amp is quite bass heavy, and if you watch that video on Premier Guitar, Mark's bass is quite high on his amp to offset some of that bright nasally wah thing going on. So that's all this EQ's doing. Again, it's not doing tons. Let's hear it without. Let's hear it with. It's not doing loads. But I found it helps, especially in the mix with other stuff. And finally, one more Space Designer here, another reverb. This is Fine Hall. I found this in large spaces, halls, Fine Hall. And again, I won't have messed with any of these settings here. I've probably just adjusted the wet just to adjust the amount. And my thinking with this reverb is they record in that barn, which I imagine has a reverb of its own, an echo. So my thinking here was to kind of try and get something like that. It didn't have to be exact, but so let's hear without. Let's hear with. Again, because we've already got a lot of reverb, it's not doing loads, but it's adding like a smooth, to my ears, it's adding a smoother reverb to complement the kind of springy, bright reverb that previous Space Designer has given us. And there you go, we've ended up with a sound that is reminiscent of, if not exactly the same, because I don't think that's quite possible, but definitely reminiscent of that Mark Speer sound. So yeah. Or, you know, with a pick. Sounds pretty good. Let's have a look now at how to do it without the wah. Without the wah actually isn't that different, so a lot of the previous steps will apply. Let's have a look at the differences. On the amp, I've got some slightly different settings. Gain's on 7, which is a fraction lower, I think, than with the wah. Bass is a little bit lower than it was, 8, 7.5. Middle's still on 10 because I still want that nice MIDI kind of sound. Treble's a little bit higher, 6.5. Presence 5 or 6. Master's on 10. and the reverb is exactly the same, so nothing's changed there. Let's hear what it sounds like just with the amp. This is going to sound like a very normal electric guitar. Okay, next up, pedal board, exactly the same. Exactly the same set, it's just a compression, very small amount of compression. This Space Designer, again, exactly the same, just a spring reverb. This next one is where the magic happens. This is our wah. So if you look what we've got going on, I'll turn it on. Again, we've got that high pass filter over here, just kind of getting rid of anything below 50. But this is the wah. I've boosted, I think I figured out somewhere between 1,000 and 1,100 hertz was kind of the sweet spot. To recreate that wah sound, that wah in a fixed position. So I've settled on 1070 and I've cranked it as high as I can. Plus 24 is the most you can get it. So I think a wah probably does it a little bit more than that, but that's as good as we can get. So here's without. Here's with. Straight away, that's the sound, isn't it? So same thing, remove everything below 50, and then absolutely crank a nice, smallish kind of peak. I don't know what the technical term is because this really isn't my field of expertise. Around 10, between 1,100. Sorry, between 1,000 and 1,100. So, you know, when I first raised it, it would have looked something like that. But I don't want that. I want more of a, like that kind of thing. And that's the sound. That is it. And then finally, we've got Space Designer here, which is again just that fine hall. So now you got your pretty good. It's pretty close. Considering we don't have a wah, that's pretty close. And that's how I did all of my recordings, I think, up until the most recent two. Juegos Inubes, forgive my pronunciation, if that was bad, and Pompon. So those two I did with a wah, but everything before that I didn't use the wah. So yeah, this is how I did it. Thank you for watching. I hope this has helped. If you've been looking for that Mark Speer tone for a while, I hope this has got you just a little bit closer, if not all the way. If you've got any other questions or topics you'd like me to cover, just leave them in the comments below and I'll do my best. Otherwise, I'll see you next time. Thanks.